Brent here with Hillside Solutions, talking with Nicholas from Creighton University, new sustainability coordinator. They launched a composting program using our services, and it's going really well. We just got a front page cover in the Omaha World Herald last Friday, September 19th. Unbeknownst to me, did you know it was going to be on the cover?
No idea.
Yeah, so that was great. That was a great. The director of Keep Omaha Beautiful emailed me around 9:30 this morning. It's like, congratulations, because it was an evergreen story, as they call it, and so it's like they can push it. You never know what's going to land. Like big breaking news, okay, we're not going to talk about that today, and then boom, it landed. And so this little video is like schools that want to do composting, like giving them an insight on how they can do it through the work you're doing, and then also just sharing with the wider community the great stuff that Creighton University is doing for sustainability, so that can be celebrated as well. So real quick, Nick, this is like fresh for you. Where'd you come from? How'd you get recruited to come to Omaha, and what's your role there?
Yeah, so I started in this position in the middle of March of this year, so in a pretty interesting time for Creighton and the country, really. And I came from Indiana State University, where I was in a similar role. And really, I worked remotely from Indianapolis, where I'm from, until August. And so I've only been in Omaha since the first weekend of August. And yeah, so I've just been in this role since then, and it's been really exciting.
Welcome to Omaha.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, we met, or, we videoed back over the summer, I believe.
Yeah.
And you made it known to me that composting was, out of a myriad of different projects that, sustainability is concerned with the campus, which I'd love to hear more about later. Composting was like a priority for you. And what brought that on? Like, why composting is one of the first things you do? And why don't, and perhaps contextualize why maybe that hasn't happened before, and what role did the pandemic play in that?
Yeah, composting. Well, I personally am just very interested in composting, so that might have been why it was high on my list. At my previous job, we weren't lucky enough to have a Hillside Solutions. We were in a smaller town, so there wasn't any sort of industrial composting. And so I taught a class with it was all freshmen, and they lived together. And so in that class, the whole objective of the class is to take like a real world problem and then figure out a solution to it. And so our problem in that semester, so that would have been a year ago, this semester, was the food waste issue on campuses, which it's not unique to ISU or Creighton. Every campus has food waste, mainly because the way the dining halls are run. I mean, if you allow students to eat as much as they want or take as much as they want, there's going to be food waste, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to look at ways to reduce that food waste, and we had done some behavioral stuff, and so we wanted to look at how we could handle the food waste better. And so we looked into creating our own composting farm on campus. And so once we started doing that, that really got me interested in composting. And it's not easy, but it's also not hard. It just takes work, which is a lot different than, like, say, solar panels. That takes a lot of money, or other things. You just kind of have to do it and like stay on it. And so that
on campus composting.
Yeah. You just need to be consistent and make sure you educate everyone. And for me, those are things that I feel like I'm good at. So that's why I thought, yeah, we should be doing this at Creighton. And it's such a high impact, low effort way for students to make a difference in their own lives. So that's why I'm interested in it. And then the pandemic definitely accelerated our plans, because in our dining halls, we went to takeout only to protect the safety of our students. But in that process, we increased the amount of waste because of all the takeout containers, which is an inevitable side effect, and it's definitely worth it to keep our students safe, but there still is more waste. And so we were exploring ways to reduce that, and the only way we could think of is to compost everything. And so that kind of like accelerated our composting timeline by like extremely accelerated it.
Yeah.
Like we had a month to plan it basically.
A month. Yeah. So that's important to know. Like it came together quick,
Yeah.
which is, from my perspective, was great because, I planted a seed with Creighton University 2 years ago, and then you come along and it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
But so how would you define the scope of the project that you're doing now? The general summary of what's happening.
The scope right now is pretty small. And the reason is because we only had a month to plan, we didn't feel comfortable asking our facilities team to take on the typical like custodial role of picking up waste. One, because they're asked to be doing more right now because of all the extra sanitation. And two, I think it's a really good way if you involve students in the composting process for them to learn about composting and waste disposal.
Right.
So I love the idea of getting students involved and getting students to run the program pretty much with anything I do, but especially with composting. And so, but because of that, we knew we weren't going to have a massive student workforce. And so we didn't want to go too big. So we aren't composting campus wide. We're really focusing on the freshman and sophomore dining hall, because we know if we can impact and influence those students that are freshmen and sophomores, not that our juniors and seniors aren't important, but our freshmen and sophomore are going to be with us for 4 more years. So we want to hit them right away. And really what it turned out being is the juniors and seniors are a lot of the volunteers, and then the freshmen and sophomores are a lot of the users. So everyone's learning. And so the scope it's small compared to what we could do, but it's impactful, even at its scale.
Yeah. So what are the metrics? What are you collecting so far?
The best metric I can come up with for how much we're collecting is about 260 pounds a day. And maybe, does that sound about right? I think I did the math based on like the density of majority paper compost in the 64-gallon totes. And so that's about what I came up with, about 260 pounds a day that is being composted, which for a completely student-run volunteer program is pretty good. And it also shows like how much more we can do.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds about right. It's about, if you're filling up 6 a day, that's like 384 gallons of material a day.
Yeah.
And you're doing, is that Monday through Friday, or doing Saturday and Sunday too?
Yeah, we're doing all week.
7 days?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty significant. And I think actually, like, at this point, out of all the people we're collecting compost from, I think that's the most material. It's a single facility in Omaha, Nebraska. The city limits is generating right now.
Oh, that's great.
So congratulations to that. So even though it's relatively small to the scale of the university system, it is definitely making an impact. So
yeah.
And one of the things I love about this program too is that the one thing that we try to inject into partnerships is the circular economy. So don't just linearly send us the material. Let's get it back to you. But what was different about that was that you said, let's get it back to other people who are in need. It's a pandemic. Some people are without food. There are definitely food deserts in Omaha. And so you talk about, what that is and what you're doing with that.
Yeah. So one of the big, I don't know, priorities, or the main priority that I'd like to see Creighton and my office have for sustainability is to view everything we do through a lens of environmental justice. I mean, it's great to save the planet, but who are we saving it for? We need to save it for everyone, and we need to save it for those people who have been disenfranchised and marginalized first.
Right.
And that's so the way that we saw how we could apply that to this program is, like you said, it's compost is amazing because, and I think y'all turn it around in like 2 months, right? We can turn our food waste into soil in 2-3 months at an industrial facility.
Yeah.
Then we have that healthy soil. I know it's not ours, it's yours, but I mean, that's created. And so if we can figure out a way to get that soil to let's say a food desert or somewhere or a community garden, that's the best thing we can do. And as a campus, we're a part of North Omaha, and I've seen literature about North Omaha having food deserts. And so what a better way to use this program than to provide soil to community gardens in and around North Omaha to alleviate food deserts, create more of a circular economy or circular food system in the city. And also that, again, goes all the way back to the education component. Students should, this is probably, I mean, I don't know, you could debate what's the biggest pro of composting, whether it's greenhouse gas reduction or healthy soil production, but either way, we're doing both, and students should be learning about that.
Yeah. So I just did the math. So that's at 260 pounds a day in a month. That's a little under 8,000 pounds of material being composted right now.
That's great.
That's pretty significant. So we're connecting the first garden. It's the City Sprouts.
Yeah.
I believe they reached out. They're coordinating plans to come to our site. We actually have a retail yard not far from your campus, and it's essentially kind of in the North Omaha, Iowa border area anyways. And so do you have other gardens, organizations you're working with or that we'll be hearing from soon too?
I'm not sure. So Becky on our team, she's the one who's taking the lead on reaching out to gardens. And as far as I know, I mean, like you said, City Sprouts is the first to reach out or the first to really accept our offer. So hopefully, if there isn't another one identified yet, I'm swamped with some other stuff, so I don't really know what she's doing on that. Yeah. She's got it handled. But if there is another, I hope that other gardens see that. I mean, free soil. I mean, that's not cheap.
Yeah,
and it's good stuff. So
walk us through a typical day of start to finish, how that composting gets set up, collected, the student effort and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's evolved now that we're kind of in a good groove, and it's rolling as if it's just like a program that we've been doing forever. So I'll say what we did at the beginning and how it's evolved.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, it was either Becky or we both work in the Office of Sustainability. We're both full-time staff. Every morning we get to campus around 10 to 11, and we pull 6 bins out. And we put those, we figured out where the best location is to put them based on where students are eating outside. And so we've seen a lot of students eating in this one quad, a lot of freshmen really, and that's where we're collecting the most waste. So we've concentrated around there. And then at lunch, or what we say like after lunch around 1:30, we have groups of volunteers, usually anywhere from 1 to 5 students who sign up to volunteer with us. They meet us at this like center part of campus, and we go check all the bins. If a bin isn't full, we just leave it there. But if it is full, and they typically, at least 4 of them are already full at that point because of the lunch shift, we will pull those back. We'll pull the bins back to first we'll pick out some trash from. Well, let me take another step back. We always place them next to trash cans because, as you know, if it's not, people use them as trash cans. So we don't want that. And then when we go look at them, we check in the trash cans. And if there's any compostable waste in there in the trash can, we'll pull it out and put it into the compost bin. And that's not really to increase the amount we compost because it's not that much each time. What it does is we really want students who are eating to see students who are volunteering with us digging through trash, because that kind of puts the signal in your brain like, oh man, if I don't do this, someone else is having to handle my waste for me. And it's working. We're getting less and less compost material thrown away and more composted. Anyways, we look through the trash, pull the bins back that are full, and we basically sort from one bin into like these bins that we keep in the back of the dining hall. The reason we do that is to consolidate the waste a lot, because most of our waste is the takeout containers with a little bit of food left in them, and if they're just thrown in there closed, then they take up so much space with low volume. So what we do is we basically stack them all together and put them in the other bins that we have, and we also pick out any sort of contamination that we find, which nowadays is not much at all. And this helps us understand, like, hey, what do we need to have more education about? Like, hey, we're seeing a lot of utensils, or we're seeing a lot of condiment packages, so we can add some more marketing to that. And then also helps the students understand like what waste systems look like. So after that, we pull those back onto campus and let them sit there until dinner time. And then after dinner, we do pretty much the same process, except we don't pull them back out. We leave them in the storage location till the next day. And now we have students that we're paying to do it in the evenings, which is great. And so everything is just running pretty smoothly now.
Okay. So I like how you brought up that you put compost bins next to the trash bins. We have I call it a Cardinal Rule when we work with organizations. It's where one bin is, all are present. And that is to say, sometimes people think, it's efficient to put a recycling container by the printer because, paper comes and you need to recycle it, but then they don't put another container next to it where, the average Joe, because of the out of sight, out of mind, theory of how we are acculturated to our relationship with waste in society, there's mindlessness behind it, and all they see is a trash can, right? And so their contamination happens. But when you see multiple containers lined up with signage, different colors, it sends a signal that there's something going on, and it makes people stop and have to bring mindfulness to that disposal process. So you found that makes a difference then.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a difference in both how contaminated our waste is, and it makes a difference in how students, like you just said, are more conscious of actually throwing waste away. And we can't expect people to make behavioral changes if they're never thinking about the behavior. And if people are just able to throw waste away without ever thinking about it, they're never going to change the way they throw their waste away. So essentially forcing or strongly asking our students to address their waste as they throw it away makes them think about it. And at that point, they can have a learning moment, and hopefully they carry this learning process off to wherever they leave our campus and go to.
Right. So I'm going to show my screen here what we do with other schools. So can you see that, Nick, this photo? So pre-pandemic, we were actually composting simultaneously with 22 different schools. Nice. Mainly elementary, and that was any given day, it's close to 10,000 students interacting with this program. That's shifted now, but we plan on that bouncing back once things settle down. But what we do typically in the elementary section, and this is a photo of Omaha Northwest High School, where there's like 1,600 students, and then in that scenario, they all sat down at their table, and a teacher came along with trash cans, and they would just empty everything into a trash can. And sometimes they didn't even do that. They would leave their lunch tray, underneath the table or something. So when we switched to this program where they had to stand up and do this de-assembly line, we were really nervous about it, but it actually worked. And so it's like the first step is like you pour your milk out, then you landfill your single-use items, like your plastic forks or milk carton or chip bags. Then your food and napkins go in the compost bin, and then stack the trays. to what you talked about, condense that material. If this is an OPS situation, Omaha Public Schools, a lot of their schools, when we go into them, are just dumping their paper trays into the landfill trash can directly. But that creates bags upon bags, 18 bags, for example, a school would produce in a lunch period, and we can get it down to 3 by just stacking. And in their scenario, their trays are paper, so they're compostable. So we end up putting them in the compost bin anyways. So that is typically what works. Now you're in a college scenario, and that's a little bit different. And so let's talk about material sourcing. So what brought on this, situation? And it's really interesting, like, to see, okay, pandemic hits, lots of tragedy, lots of bad news. But there's these first order, second order, third order effects that start rolling out, and nobody really knows, like, as soon as you declare a pandemic, like, what happens next. Like, well, we know, like, we're going to shut down schools, or schools going to change, or work patterns going to change. But then then you get these, like, okay, well, Creighton Prep, a second order effect is we're doing to-go lunch. Okay, third order effect is we have a ton of waste now. What do we do with that? And then after that, it's like, well, this is what we do with it. We enter composting. So that's like a third or fourth order effect of a pandemic. And in that scenario, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And because this is a pilot program, we should say that. But I understand the intention is, if this goes well, if there's funding, this will stay, for the foreseeable future. So what could become a response to a temporary pandemic could become a legacy of sustainability for your university system. And what brought upon it was this: hey, we have to change the materials that we use. So how are we going to deal with it? And then now you have a situation where some materials are compostable serviceware, okay, but you also have some materials that are single-use plastics. And how has that been dealing with that? Have you had conversations with food purchasers, like, can we get all compostable, or what can we do about this? How have you coordinated with them on those things?
Yeah, that we did coordinate on all of the material sourcing, but like we talked about, we literally planned this a month before students came back to campus. So we were able to purchase compostable, what are those called? Shells. The takeout containers, which the whole program kind of hinged on that. If we couldn't get those, there really wouldn't have been a point to do this, because that's 80% of what we're putting in there. But we didn't have enough time to get compostable silverware. So that was already purchased, and we can't. In a perfect world, we could flip that and buy more, but we don't have an unlimited budget. So we have to use. We're gonna go through that stock of what we have and revisit that. And I can't. That's not my area, so I don't get to pick how that gets chosen. But it would make sense for us to now, if we continue composting, to add that compostable silverware. And same with the condiment packets. Those are the two biggest things we're seeing. Mainly because they're so easy to forget about and keep inside those shells when you throw it away. Even if you're trying to compost well, but you 5 minutes to go to class and you throw your shell in there, it's easy to forget. I would do it too. So there's that line of, we want to make it really easy to compost, but we also want there to be some sort of interaction where you have to think about it before you compost, because we don't want. This sounds counterintuitive, but I don't want it to turn into a situation where we're just mindlessly throwing stuff away again. I really want students to always be thinking about a waste disposal. So ideally, we're separating recyclables and compostables, and nothing goes to the landfill, and you're still thinking about it. But yeah, we're gonna hopefully move towards compostable serviceware, is a roundabout way to say that, because I know it's out there. I've seen it.
Right. In the case of the Switch, Food Hall, and Blackstone, we had more than a month of planning, actually half a year. And so with them, like, we went to a Cisco meeting where they reviewed all the single-use serviceware that they could potentially use. And, we ensured that it was like compostable through our program, because that area does get really weird, like if you don't
Mhm.
know what's really compostable, when it comes to clamshell or fork or cup, the marketing is strange out there, unregulated, unstandardized, so that's important to really like make sure, is this actually compostable, or is this something that says it's green or
Yeah.
eco-friendly when it's actually still something that belongs in the landfill, but it's, because it has 10% plastic
Yeah.
and 100% plastic, um, so all I have to say, that's something we often help out with people when there's more than just a month. And when setting up these programs, it's good to also coordinate with the procurement purchasing department, to say, you know, what can we get that's going to wind up in these bins? What can we change? What can we reduce, reuse? What's recyclable, what's compostable? What are we going to landfill? And things like that. So, um, so the planning of it. So there were some meetings that I was a part of,
Mhm.
but how did you prep and get student involvement and kind of the planning steps for that?
Yeah. So I try to use a similar model, and I say a model, it's not like written down anywhere. It's just kind of how my brain works and I do my job. Is I try to do all of the back end logistics, boring, the work of getting things passed through that students don't want to do or don't even know that need to be done. And I try to get a framework put in place so that I can hand a project over to students and they get to do the fun, rewarding part, like composting and doing a story with the World Herald, and then give them all the credit, because that's what we should be doing at a university. So that's kind of how I viewed this as well. I contacted you, then I contacted our Sodexo team, then I contacted our approval process. I contacted my boss, and I made sure all of these ducks were in a row, and everything ended up working out. So then we went forward with it. I put a plan together of how we're going to collect. We had to change that plan once we started collecting, of course. But
Yeah.
I made sure I was the one who handled all of that like tedious work. I mean, because it's my job to do that, one, but also it's going to be more successful if you just allow students to have fun and be in a position where they are making an impact, and it's not overly complicated and overly tedious. It's really just dragging bins out, sorting through it, and going home. And so that's the way we've been operating, and that's how I will be operating with most things that we do.
Yeah. I'll pull up the article here. So this was September 19th, 18th, sorry. Front page of the World Herald, and um, there are our containers collecting
Mhm.
compostables in. There's a poster on top. You can see, and these are, looks like you in the middle, and then two student volunteers. Like,
Yep.
this is the sorting process, right?
Yep. Yep. And you can see there with the bins that are kind of parallel to each other against those walls. Those are what we call our stationary bins. Those never move from there. And that's why
Okay.
some of them don't have any labels on them, and we don't try to keep those clean. And we did that. The reason we did that is because we found that we're going to need to change labeling as we see the different contaminants. So we didn't want to have to label 18 bins. We just wanted to switch it up on 6. And we also are doing our best to keep the bins clean so that it's approachable by students. Students don't want to go up to a bin that smells like a rotten steak or has like spaghetti sauce on the lid. So it's easier to keep 6 bins looking nice and updated signage. So that's why we chose this way.
Yeah, so our team, you can see these bags here. Our team will switch out
Yeah.
the bags each pickup. But what is your team doing for container cleanliness?
So we okay. So every morning, I or Becky, I'll spray the lid off with like a sanitizing spray, wipe off any food that's on there, and then I'll look if the bag will generally have a little bit of food waste at the bottom. If it's like some bread and stuff that doesn't smell, I'll just leave that bag in there and we'll reuse it. We want to reuse as many bags as we can. But if it has like some chicken bones or some cheese or some egg, what I'll do is we bought some of our own bags, and I'll just switch them out real quick. And we don't do that much, but that's how we keep those clean. Or I'll switch the dirty bag with one of the clean bags that y'all provided on the other bins, and it's a little bit of extra work, but we don't want, and we can't really have campus smelling terrible, and we don't want that perception of compost that it smells bad, because it's not true, unless there is like rotting bones, but it won't. We just don't want that to cause an issue for our program.
Yeah. So what, like how are students benefiting from this, do you feel like, so far?
The reception from students is it was overwhelmingly positive. I think students are benefiting in mainly through education. They're learning about how to compost. They're learning that it's not hard to compost. And so hopefully when we expand this program, it's like second nature to these students, and it becomes a part of Creighton and just what we do. So each year when new students are coming in, they're coming into a campus that we just compost. That's what we do. All the other students on campus, they already know that. And it's just going to be easy to train and redo the program each year. And so I think students are learning a lot. They're able to reduce their carbon footprint by being able to compost. And I think they also, right now in COVID, there's not as much that students can do. Like normally our students are really active in the community, or really are able to go out into town or have group meetings. We've had to cut that back a lot because of the danger of COVID. And so this kind of has given students an opportunity to do something that's like fulfilling outside the classroom. They know they're making a difference. A sense of community, like when I meet with these students, they're excited to be there, to hang out outside and do something that they feel is good. And it is good.
Is there a way to incorporate this into credits for their academic record, is things like that, or is this completely unrelated to all that?
I haven't thought about that.
The resume builder kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with the students who are involved in the planning process, I would and I am encouraging them to like put on their resume, like I founded a campus composting project. And that's huge for resumes. I mean, graduating, you're not going to have much experience because you just graduated, but having that on your resume, that's really cool. And there's definitely ways that we'll be able to incorporate it into the academics. I know one student reached out, or a couple actually reached out, about potentially grabbing some of the waste and using it to try and compost on campus near our greenhouse. And that's something we're looking into. So yeah, different things just pop up, and it's really my job to incorporate student ideas, faculty ideas into what we're already doing.
Yeah. So you mentioned expanding, if all goes well, like what do you think the next steps are for this?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. And really, I'm working with students to maybe rethink how we view waste on campus, period. And so I like to think outside the box and do things differently. And I think with waste, that's really beneficial, because I don't think the way we handle waste in the United States is very beneficial to the planet or people. And so I'd like to model a system on campus that is completely different than what you'll see in like neighborhood collection. So we're still thinking through how all that would work. But what I've thought for composting is expanding it to all of our outdoor locations. Right now, we're just basically on one half of campus for half a day. I'd like to see some permanent bins permanently out on our green spaces, so that people can publicly compost, and then selectively incorporating composting into different buildings. So we don't need composting bins in the gym, for instance, right? But I think it would be really beneficial to have composting facilities in residence halls, because students still eat in their dorms and stuff. And we're definitely considering expanding composting into the dining halls once we move back in. That would actually be the first step. And
Yeah.
then going to outside infrastructure, and then selectively moving into buildings that we think there could be a benefit.
Yeah.
Bathrooms too, with paper towels.
So one thing I want to make sure we talk about is communication pieces. So like, how have you let the student population, or at least the sophomores, freshmen, know what's going on, and to help deter contamination, increase participation, and how would you multiply that, campus wide, so that people aren't just thinking they're participating but not knowing what the heck they're doing, and just going all out on these containers with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, there's on a college campus, communication is often difficult no matter where you are, because you think of it, it's like its own city. You have faculty, you have staff, you have students, you have volunteers, you have outside organizations, and getting a message out to everyone is practically impossible. So there are like official channels to get information out, and we'll definitely pursue those. So for example, if we expand composting, and when students are coming in during orientation next year, I'll get up in front of them, talk about it, and that's somewhat effective. But you probably remember when you were a freshman going through orientation, you had like 10,000 things coming at you, and you're like,
Yeah.
where do I eat? It's like that. So
Yeah.
so that's useful. But what's most useful is through just a cultural shift of like, this is just what we do, and if we can turn the culture of campus into we just compost, then that's the best way to do it. And we're doing that now through consistently having the bins out, consistently showing students that this is the right thing to do. It's easy to do. It's going to be here for you to do every single day, so that students are starting to expect it. They're like, wait, where's the compost bins? Like, this is how we throw our trash away. And so that's important on my office to be consistent about it. And then it's also important for the students to kind of spread it organically. And that's the best way to get a message across, at least to students.
Yeah. So I want to show the webpage you have for this is Creighton University's website, but it's your landing page for your sustainability sector. Sustainable Creighton, that's your logo.
Yep.
And then you put together kind of, like why, how, and then this video that explains it. And then this is the poster that we signed, that we provided you, like, define the scope, like food, because it's an industrial facility that you're sending it to, any and all related food items, non-recyclable papers like paper towels, napkins, coffee filters, tea bags, although that's not really being collected front of house. But and then compostable serviceware, that like the clamshells and things like that. And so and then the different okay, and you have your own this is Instagram.
It's our Instagram feed. Yeah.
Cool. So then for people to know what you're up to, this is the landing page, creighton.edu/sustainability.
Yep.
Apart from composting, what's next? What's in your like 5-10 year plan here?
Well, that's what's next. We are writing our campus sustainability plan right now. That was really when I got hired, was what my directive is we need to get this written. And the way I view it is a lot of my energy is going towards coordinating a large task force that is helping me write this. It's 30 plus people from across campus that right now we're collecting data so we know what we need to improve on. And then starting in January, we're going to start the planning process of, okay, we've got this data. We can identify like, hey, for instance, we're not recycling enough or whatever it is. And then we will apply actions to improve those metrics. So that's a massive process because sustainability, it sometimes, and not necessarily at Creighton, is viewed as like an add-on or like an extra task. And really through the planning process, the objective is to integrate it into something that, just like composting, this is just what we do. Sustainability is core to Creighton's mission, so it's core to everyone's job, everyone's responsibility. And through the plan, we're trying to infuse that on campus. But we are also we are open to program and projects that an immediate need pops up, like composting. So this popped up, so we addressed it. Another one is recycling. Right now on campus, we've had to reduce our recycling pickups because our custodial staff has new responsibilities with sanitation. So what we're doing right now, after I get off this meeting, I'll finish creating an outline, is we're making a recycling competition between all the residence halls to get the students to actually take their own recycling out and handle it in that way. So we're looking for issues or areas that can be improved immediately, but with the idea that there's a long-term planning process happening.
Awesome. Great. Anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, this has gone really well. The students love it. It really wouldn't be possible without all the student work. I could have made all the framework and all the plans, but like I couldn't have done it myself. So the students have been really crucial to this happening, and so I'm thankful for them.
Yeah, and to any students that may be watching this, there are a lot of times I've been at the table with decision makers because the students spoke up and created a framework of support through and or in conjunction with staff, teachers, faculty, saying here's a green team we have, here's a safety net. So if we get these programs going, there's going to be people that are going to be actively participating. And creating succession plans is really important. These students are going to they're going to go on to other things, but how do we incorporate new students? And in the case of Creighton, that's you're the succession plan. They can kind of hold everything together. But for entities that don't have the budget for a dedicated sustainability director, having succession plans in place, super important. So, well, this pilot project goes till November, and at that point, you guys are going to assess, what the next steps are, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll continue. But otherwise, we'll keep an eye on, and stay in touch with what you guys are doing. And thanks for doing this. This is exciting stuff. So
this is a great partnership. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, I'll let you get on to the recycling plan. Enough about compost, and we'll be in touch.
Yep. See ya. Thank you.